So I think the best one is to actually dogfood in your own system. So we use InsightFinder to manage InsightFinder. So we show to our customers, even we have very small team, right? We are a small startup. We have limited resources. We don't have dedicated SRE to babysit our system, yet our system availability is very high. And so we give them the examples, right? The real examples that happen in our production and how our system actually help with diagnosis and recovery. So that's actually always been very convincing. And we use our own system to actually test our environments, like test our product all the time.
Welcome to Triangle Tweener Talks, a weekly podcast by builders for builders where we explore the startup journey from the idea to the exit and all the lessons in between with an exclusive focus on founders from the Triangle region of North Carolina. Now here's your host, serial founder and general partner of the Triangle Tweener Fund, Scott Wingo.
First, a huge thank you to our gold sponsors. Today we are featuring Robinson Bradshaw. With national reach and deep Triangle ties, Robinson Bradshaw delivers high-touch, sophisticated legal counsel to emerging growth companies and venture investors. We'd also like to recognize our silver sponsors. Today's Tweener Talk features Automated Consulting Group. From AI strategy to ROI in 90 days, Automated Consulting Group brings executive-level AI expertise to businesses without enterprise budgets. Thank you again to all of our sponsors for supporting Triangle Tweener Talks and the entire Triangle startup community. It takes an ecosystem to build a thriving community, and sponsors like these are very valuable, and they contribute their time and also help sponsor things like the Triangle Tweener Talks and Triangle Tweener Times. Thank you. Welcome to Tweener Talks. On this episode, I interview Dr. Helen Gu. She is an engineering professor at NC State and also the founder and CEO of InsightFinder. InsightFinder uses machine learning and AI to provide improved reliability to Fortune 1000 companies. It provides proactive knowledge of when a large complex system is potentially going to go down or have a problem. That's called observability. And then it predicts and then also can help remediate those problems before they happen. It's like clairvoyance for complex systems. I believe InsightFinder is set up to be one of the biggest AI successes here in the Triangle under Helen's leadership. They've got a great foundation they've been building on for 10 years and are really spring-loaded. I learned a ton from this conversation. Not only did I learn some tidbits about Helen's background I'd never had a chance to ask her about, but also how do you go from a professor into being a CEO of a company? It seems like a whole different skill set, and we discuss how Helen tackled that. And then at the end, after we kind of wrap up that discussion, Helen was kind enough to share some of her unique perspectives on where AI and LLMs are going to go. I have a daughter that's a student in college, so I asked the perennial question, what do we do about this with these kids today and AI? And she has a great answer for that. We also talk about what some of the things she thinks AI can and can't do in the future. This is an amazing conversation. I really hope you enjoy it. This is just a great example of one of these gems we have in the Triangle that until you went looking, you wouldn't realize is here and has such an amazing leader and one of the smartest people I've ever met. I have to go take a nap after this conversation because it was my head is full of new knowledge. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I do. And here is Helen Gu. Hey everybody, welcome back to Triangle Tweener Talks. Today's guest is Helen Gu. She is the founder and CEO of InsightFinder AI. Helen, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So I've known you for quite a while, but you're new to the audience. Give us a little bit of background. Where are you from? And tell us your story up into InsightFinder, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. Yeah. So first of all, I'm a professor here at NC State, and so very proud to be faculty here. And so I started as a faculty in 2008. So since then, I have been actually doing AI for system management for this all past 18, I don't know how many years now, lost track.
18 years. Very good math. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so during the back in around 2013, and so we were doing a lot of unsupervised machine learning, and so we published papers extensively in this space, and so back then there's a lot of kind of cloud just gets popular, and so many companies actually encounter problems. If you guys still remember when those cloud outages happens, right? You lost basically Netflix on Christmas Eve. So there's many headline news on those cloud outages, and so Google is actually started on building their Google Cloud service, and so they actually read our research papers on anomaly detection in distributed systems, and so they invited me to basically be part of the Google's scientist team, and so I basically helped them to actually evaluate one of our algorithms doing anomaly detection. And so at the end of the 11 months, I work with SRE side by side, and so it shows good results. And then when I see it actually works in real world, so I basically got a chance to get funding from National Science Foundation to bootstrap my company, InsightFinder. So that's how InsightFinder got started. And so fast forward to today, and we actually have been supporting a lot of Fortune 500 companies and help them to make sure their systems are reliable and robust. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about your period of time at NC State. So you, at school, did you study machine learning? Are you kind of a long-time AI machine learning person? So back into the college and getting your PhD?
Yeah. So I was amazed. I started my PhD in year 2000. And then basically I published my first research paper, believe it or not, is using neural networks to predict actually user interest for actually allow basically video on demand services running high quality. So that's my first research paper, right? Back then.
So you've been in this space since 2000, really. You've been thinking about this problem. That's interesting. Wow.
Yeah. So then, back then, not a lot of people know neural networks. And so we're dealing with neural networks has 30 neurons, 3 tier. So very small neural networks, right? And so, but I started to get really interested in it is that I saw basically machine learning can actually do a lot of interesting stuff like prediction. Usually human is very bad, right? So we are very good at making decisions when we get enough signals. And so we are good at reacting things, but we are very bad on predicting things. And so when I actually look at a lot of but I'm not just a machine learning person. I'm actually this hardcore distributed system person. So reliability is always my research theme. And so when I see basically this distributed system becomes failed, it has, it's very hard to recover the failure. So what I observe is that if you can know the problems before the failure happen, and a lot of times it's a lot easier to fix a problem. So that's basically where it sparks my research using machine learning to predicting problems first.
Yeah, it's very prescient of you. To 2000, these things we were just getting cloud. That actually postdates, AWS wasn't really a thing in 2000, was it? No. Yeah. So what was that something that in college, like one of your professors made you interested in, or how did you kind of stumble on this problem in the year 2000?
Yeah, so the project I was working on is actually sponsored by NASA. Back then, there's a project called the Pathfinder. You probably heard that Pathfinder mission, like sending the rover to the Mars to actually collect information. So one of the things that because you need to stream the data from Mars to Earth, and so in between Mars and Earth, there's a lot of things could happen, right? But if you basically cannot handle this streaming well, and essentially your mission failed, right? So billions of dollars got wasted. And so my research is about how do we ensure quality service when you give these very challenging distributed environments. So back then, we basically want to say is that if there's transient network glitches, and so you still want the system actually be able to continue resiliently rather than crash or fail, right? So So essentially, we developed the kind of adaptive technology to predict, okay, what's the bandwidth look like? What's kind of image resolution you can support? And what's the frame rate you can support? And so we basically combine all those information together to perform quality of service adaptation. So that's basically the starting point. Like back now, a lot of people look at like control theory to all basic rule-based system, right? So we say, oh, if bandwidth drops to under this, you do this. But this is basically not intelligent enough. What if you encounter a situation, it's not covered by rules, right? And so that basically sparked me to look at machine learning, because machine learning can actually handle all kinds of situations. And so especially for anomaly detection, it's really to understand what's basically deviates from the normal behaviors, right? And how to fix that. So that's really the trigger point for me to look at this field. Yeah.
Got it. It's a multivariable equation that you're looking for correlations across the surface area versus like an A versus B versus C type of a problem, which is a whole nother ball of wax, as we say. Yeah. Yeah. Are you familiar with the book and the movie The Martian? I don't know if you've seen that or not. He gets stuck on Mars. In the future, he's on a Mars mission, gets stuck, and then to communicate back to Earth, he digs up one of the Pathfinder robots and reconnects it to NASA, and they use it to communicate. So you should watch that; you would enjoy it. It's like it would be a throwback to your experience there. And it's funny, they have to go get all the people that were out of retirement at JPL that worked on the Pathfinder mission and bring them in to be like, what do we do now that this guy's dug this thing up? How do we reboot it?
Yeah, that's exactly the point. To like if you don't know how to actually automatically understand the system behavior, you have to actually hire the people who are generation developing.
And they're going through printouts of tread printer code from like way back when. It's funny.
Yeah.
At NC State, on that side of your life, how many do you carry a class load, or are you doing mostly research?
Yeah, I teach operating system class and distributed system class every year. And so it has been really fun to teach that class, during this 18 years and teach a lot of students. And so obviously my subject also changes, right? So there's so many things evolved during this past 18 years. And so, and it's always fun to see how the young generation actually start to, really leverage technology, right? So their horizon also changes, right? So I think, I always enjoy teaching. It's a fun part of my my job. Yeah.
Yeah. Whenever I go out there and do a little guest lecture, it's always interesting to see what the questions the kids ask. Mine topics are always startups, and they've gotten so much smarter about startups now. The 5 or 10 years ago, they'd say, "How do you come up with ideas?" And now they're like, I'm on my third idea and I'm thinking about taking a safe investment, and how do I think about that versus a convertible note? And I'm like, holy cow, you guys, I didn't know half of the words you just said when I was in school. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. So one thing I want to mention, I think NC State has an entrepreneur program. They basically start to educate the students about entrepreneurship. And so I actually talk about that in my class because funny enough, the InsightFinder is based on the idea coming from my class. Actually, back then there's a student called Daniel Dean sitting in my class. And so he actually started to work on this, unscripted behavior learning with me in the class. And then basically he becomes my PhD student. Then we publish paper. Yeah.
So is your operating system an undergrad, and how in distributed systems that's grad?
So for operating system, I teach both. So sometimes I teach grad, some teach undergrad, but mostly grad. And then distributed system is just a grad. Yeah.
We have a good crop of masters and PhD students there.
Yeah. So mostly master and PhD students. Yes. Yeah.
And then, are you in one of the square, or what do they call that? The engineering, one of the EB buildings, EB1, EB2, or is that where you office?
Yeah, EB2. Yeah.
How do you CEO a company and do that? Like how do you time manage that?
Yeah, so I think it's a very tough thing to juggling, and so told everybody I never thought of start a company. And so this is all happened without me thinking too much. I thought
just start a company. Yeah.
Yeah. I just thought of this 1 year sabbatical. That's it. And then comes a 10-year journey. So it is but it's fun, like in the sense that I see a lot of real world, right? So as a professor, I think most of the time we develop algorithms that we come up with new ideas, but because we don't have the exposure to the real world problems or exposure to the real world data, so a lot of times the research is very disconnected with the real world, right? And that's sort of like, unfortunate thing. And like I teach my students in my system class, and I always tell them, right? So, for example, IP multicast, right? So it used to be such a hot topic. Thousands of papers published in the space, but nobody uses it, right? It's not because the algorithm is not good. It's because it's not practical. Nobody wants to deploy multicasting IP later. So I think the good news here is that, by doing this company, it gave me inspiration for research. And at the same time, I think doing startup, I think it's very important is to, adapt, right? So I think one of the things that I think being in academia, and because we always actually trying to find things new, and we always trying to change. And so I think, somehow I'm trained to be adaptive, right? So I think like nobody is born to be a CEO, right? So certainly not me, right? So I still don't know how to be the best CEO, but I think I'm learning and I adapt every day. And I think the other thing is that you need to actually understand so what's the most important thing, right? So I always tell everybody, I think the key thing is that, you always have more tasks than the time you have for it. And so the key thing is to prioritize, and every day, every hour, and you need to understand what's the top priority and do that first, and then push things forward, right? And so that's basically, I think, the time management is forget about the balance, right? So it's all about the prioritization.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you taking time for the podcast. I know you're super busy, and sharing these little gold nuggets with other founders is very, very valuable, and we appreciate it. Have you found, so I'm a tech founder too, and I think the biggest thing I realized when you become a CEO is suddenly you're a salesperson, and we don't really have any formal training in being a salesperson. You kind of have to, I kind of call it persuasion. You have to persuade some of the students to take your class, right? And you may want to persuade a TA or an RA or that kind of thing. But it's usually pretty easy to persuade technical people. Just kind of tell them about an exciting problem, and then you maybe you have a fun computer to work on, and they're happy. Sometimes pizza helps as well. So that's kind of like selling to technical people, especially students, is pretty easy. Have you found that to be the case where you've had to learn a little bit more and build a whole new set of skills that you didn't have as a professor?
Yeah. So interesting enough, actually, sales is a part of the entrepreneurship like I enjoy most. So interestingly, so being professor, actually, there's one part of my life is to beg for money from National Science Foundation. So I still need to sell ideas, but I sell to program manager, right? I sell to my peers. But here you are selling your product to customers. So I think the difference is that it's not necessarily just about the novelty. It's really about solving the problem now, right? So you need to have this basically burning problem to identify and to sell it now. So I think I really enjoy talking to customers, because I think that this make me to be aware of what's going on in the real world, what's the most needed function features by our customers. And so the other thing I think is that it's important for the founders to lead the sales at the beginning, because you need to actually set your vision with customers, because most of the time the startup we are building is develop something completely new, right? And then if you just develop some incremental stuff, it's very hard to survive, right? So most of the time you are selling a very new thing, and there's no for examples. And so that takes a lot of time and education for different people to accept that. And so what I feel like that's, one thing is lucky is that we will be able to find some like a marquee customers who is willing to take a risk with a small company, and then help us to really polish the product and ideas. So that's basically very enjoyable. But now basically we already have, really good set of customers. And so we are ready to actually scale the sales. So now, we have professional sales people to help us. And so I think the good news is that basically I also learned from them is that how to actually have, really high level value proposition to talk to customers, different customers.
So you learn how to sell a little bit differently. And then once you have salespeople, you learn all about comp plans and incentives and how important those are. Because if you don't get those right, then the sales team goes left and you want them to go right. And there's a lot of learning when you take the plunge in entrepreneurship, and it never stops. I'm learning something new every day. And that's the fun. For lifelong learners, like I'm sure you are, it's like there's always something new to learn in startup land for sure. So it's 2016. You had the student there, and you've got the idea. How hard was it to start the company? Did you need seed capital and that kind of thing, or did you just start it and say, I'll figure that out later?
Yeah. So for me, the story is that I write an SF grant called the SBIR grant. And so we got that grant, and because the strong story at Google, I think that's basically very helpful. And so I don't need to actually seek the investment money right away. And so obviously I even don't know investor. So and this is completely new for me. And so we got some angel investments from my friends at Google. And so basically that's how we get started. And then there's some investors actually, they went to this SBIR conference. So they have the conference to basically showcase all the kind of the projects that done by those awardees. And then so I met our first VC actually there in the conference. And then from there, that VC started to introduce me to other VCs. So that's how we actually get our C round and, A round, things like that.
Yeah. And then you have local investor, Idea Fund is an investor. I'm an LP in that. And then also Tweener Fund is an investor. So I'm invested two ways in InsightFinder. So I'm a happy shareholder through that. How did you meet the Idea Fund, guys?
Yeah, so that's also an interesting story. I was actually making presentation to our board at NC State. So we have annually kind of board meetings inviting all the kind of important and executives in companies, sponsors to the department. So I was talking about my research and my company, and in the audience, and there's Kendall co-founder actually, so who also actually graduated from NC State, and so. He was sitting there, he was listening to my talk, and he basically introduced to Lister saying here's an interesting company, and then you should talk to Helen. And then that's how I get to know Lister.
Oh, I didn't know that story. That's cool. It wasn't Todd or Eric.
It was Eric, yeah. Eric.
Oh, Eric. Okay, got it. Wow, the Triangle is a small place for sure. And you weren't really pitching for that purpose, but that's a happy accident that it became an introduction to a VC. And then, so I kind of think of your company as having two eras. There's kind of like 2016 to kind of that big moment in 2022 when ChatGPT came on the scene. And I'm sure you have an era where you were using kind of, older, now we would call it older. It still has a purpose. You're using kind of more machine language type things. Has that GPT era and LLMs, has that kind of changed how you think about your underlying technology, or you're still using kind of the core technology you started with in 2016?
Yeah, so it's very interesting. I think AI is not new, right? Even like ChatGPT is now new technology, right? So it's basically a well-known technology, but they engineered to basically natural language. And the good news with natural language is that it's very easy for a human to understand the output, right? So I think machine learning in the past is struggling with basically how to let human to understand the output and why that actually generated the output. But natural language basically get people to see the miracle machine learning can do, right? And so I think it helps InsightFinder in the way that more and more people start to believe, okay, machine learning can do actually something that is really useful and impactful. And so in terms of underlying technology, we basically kind of evolve the technology into, we call it composite AI, because it's not one AI technology can be suitable for all data, right? So the space we deal with is still machine data, right? So we deal with machine telemetry, logs and traces. And those data are very different from, human language, right? So ChatGPT they are good at process human language, but they cannot actually do machine data. If you ask ChatGPT to do prediction or to do anomaly detection for numerical data, they won't be able to do it, or they do a poor job on that. Right, exactly. So, and so human language is very predictable, right? So even we have different languages, but compared to machine data, the variety of human language is a lot lower, and dimension is a lot lower. So, so that's basically we believe ChatGPT is very good at it. You generate kind of human friendly information, right? So that's where we leverage in our product, is that we extract the insights from numerical data, but most of the time our customer will say it's very technical, it's hard to understand. So we basically leverage ChatGPT, like LLM, right? Not necessarily ChatGPT. We can leverage all kinds of LLMs, and so to produce those insights that are better, that are easy to understand. And more recently, we also look at MCP, those protocols, right? So this really amazing to connect those different tools and with LLM to actually perform tasks automatically. So if you think about InsightFinder, is our AI engine is extracting all kinds of insights, and feed those insights into basically the agent, and then the agent can leverage the LLM to actually compose their workflows and to produce results. So that actually turns out to be work really, really well. And it helps us to overcome a challenge, right? So we basically always have the challenge, people will say, oh, how do I see these results, right? So Datadog is very successful because they have basically beautiful UI, allow the SREs to easily get to different charts. But now basically it's no longer a kind of visualization problem, because if you have the a kind of natural language agent as an interface, and technically you can get all the information you need through a very simple interface.
So let me decode that for folks. I understood what you said, but there's folks that watch it that maybe they're doing a different part of technology and wouldn't understand some of that. So my job is I work at, I'll just pick a random thing, Fidelity Bank, and that's this highly available system. And if it goes down, my banks are closed and my traders can't trade. It's bad, right? So they hire, they have a very large distributed complex system, and they hire they have a CIO, and then, his or her job is to make sure the site doesn't go down. So they have a team that's monitoring and site reliability engineer, which is an SRE, which is what that acronym is. And they'll even have database engineers and then they're using all this infrastructure because it's so critically important to that organization that the system stays up. And then, so they can, but what's cool is instead of, so the way your system generally works is, instead of them saying, "Oh no, the server's down. What do we do?" Your system says, "Hey, we see something concerning over here, and it's a level." I'm sure you can say this is DEFCON. This is emergency 911, or this is something that warrants a little investigation. I'm sure you have some severity thing, and then you alert them that there's something that could be a problem in the system. So you give them kind of radar or an early warning system for what's going on. Is that a fair kind of layman's version of what InsightFinder does?
Yes. So we can predict the incidents before that happen. And also we can perform basically remediations.
And then I say, okay, well, what should I do? And so then what's neat is it's probably, I always, in my little even world of e-commerce, we would say, let's say we're trying to list something on eBay and 1,000 of them fail. It's hard for the customer to go through so many alerts. So an alerting system's hard, but you could with I could be in Claude or ChatGPT, and because you have MCP, I could even just have a chat with your system and say, hey, how's the system doing today? And you'd be like, all green, or I could say, hey, I see this status indicator that I've got a server down. Should I be concerned? And your system will say, yeah, it's something to take a look at, but it's not a huge severity. And then you can say, well, what's wrong with the server? And your system will answer back. So you can have like a chat with InsightFinder to kind of not only ask what's going on, but then do the remediation for you. Is that kind of like what the MCP role would be in your example?
So even can do better job is that, for example, when you log into InsightFinder product, now we basically give you an instant kind of summary, what's going on right now in your system. And then you can actually prompt the agent to actually do all kinds of work for you, either create Jira tickets or like do further network probing, verify issues, or basically retrieve certain line charts and show basically a report, like a dual comparison report. So we have tons of pre-built use case for customer to use. So they even don't need to actually type all the prompt. And so we have those configurable prompts for them. So they can easily actually get, the AI agent to do things for them.
So let's say I'm Fidelity and I install this. Is it will it work on cloud and on-prem and across clouds and all that? Wow, that's complicated. Yeah. That seems like that alone is a huge engineering feat to have a system work across all that complexity. How did, and I don't want any proprietary secrets, but just from a layman's perspective, I must have to install some kind of a monitoring agent on all the machines or give you access to log files at least. But to do stuff, you probably need some kind of an agent there. Do you go through, I know, was it IBM or HP? One of those guys there's these big enterprise frameworks for this kind of stuff. Do you work with those things or did you have to build your own?
Yeah, so the thing that we are doing now is basically a multi-agent system, right? So essentially, we believe basically even like for LLM is not necessary. So we are building SLM. So like those small language model to actually do specialized tasks. And so what we do here is that you can actually get a task, and then basically we have kind of like a orchestration controller agent to first kind of understand your ask, and then basically come up with a plan to do things. And so, for example, if you want to investigate such an incident, and the agent will say, okay, first let's look at whether this database is okay, whether that is okay, and what's basically the anomaly timeline look like, and they will do a set of information collection and then basically compose the information together and do the causal inference and eventually give you an answer. So all those tasks used to be actually you have to do it manually, right? Just simulating how SRE work, right? So when SRE got paged, what they do, right? So they log into line chart first to look at whether my server is up running, whether my database is okay, and whether my network is okay. All right, if it's all of that okay, then should I look at error log? Is there any exceptions, right? So this basic process, no matter what kind of incident you are debugging, what kind of system you are doing, that the process is actually very, very similar. So that's basically what we use AI to automate, right? So we basically ask the AI to do all those like tedious work, information collection and correlation and, filtering, reasoning, and so dedupe. And then basically we provide only a very small subset of precise context information to human. And then SRE can say, this is the problem. do the reboot for this database or do the reboot for the web server, right? So, or add connections. So they can actually make a very clear kind of decision on what to do. And then they can even instruct the AI agent to do that, right? So rather than they have to manually do the rebooting or, write the scripts to do things.
This is like one of those things when you started selling it, I bet it was hard to convince people it would work. Did you have the classic entrepreneur chicken and egg problem early on? I mean, you had Google kind of giving you a little bit of a vote of confidence there, which is always helpful, I imagine. But how did you, it's like one of these things. So if someone says, I'm not really sure this will work, you can't really do a proof of concept on this because it's kind of a meaty, this is like a too meaty of a thing to do a proof. Maybe you could do a small system to start with or something. Like how did you solve that chicken and egg problem?
Yeah, so I think the best one is to actually dogfood in your own system. So we use InsightFinder to manage InsightFinder. So we show to our customers, even we have very small team, right? We are a small startup. We have limited resources. We don't have dedicated SRE to babysit our system, yet our system availability is very high. And so we give them the examples, right? The real examples that happen in our production and how our system actually help with diagnosis and recovery. So that's actually always been very convincing. And we use our own system to actually test our environments, like test our product all the time. So this allow us to actually, has live data to kind of lab testing our code all the time, right? So if we need to change algorithms, and that basically immediately will flag as a problem if we made some mistakes. Of course, we have, testing and staging and, production environments. So I think that's actually the best part. And the other part is that we developed this replay mechanism, right? So essentially we tell customers that, hey, you have a historical data and you have incidents. Always the answer is yes, right? And so we say, okay, we can stream your historical data and to simulate the real scenario as if this is a new incident. And you can see how InsightFinder actually being able to detect problems earlier, right? So this is basically always the easy, how we actually do the POC with our customers. And then just a very recent example, right? We closed a 7-digit deal with Fortune 50 companies. And so the whole POC take less than 30 days.
And it's that replay functionality? Yeah. Does it blow their mind that it works? Like you can say, well, here's where your server went down and we would have known, 30, like how much earlier do you typically know? Is it like minutes or days or?
Yeah. So typically in the real world production environments, we can know the problems hours ahead. So generally speaking, that gave the SRE team enough time to actually take actions. So we basically show that, most of the time, before you have the widespread problems, and you can always detect those early symptoms, like early kind of root cause anomalies much earlier, right? So using our technology.
And people are willing to pay 7 figures for that because the hours ahead gives them time to remediate it before something goes down, and going down is very, very expensive. So it's an insurance policy, basically. They're willing to pay a lot up front. I'll pay you $5 million to avoid having a $50 million problem or whatever it is. That's kind of like their rationale. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah. So you guys have, just looking at LinkedIn, looks like there's about 30 people in the company. And you're growing really nicely. What do you think a lot about long-term? Or you just kind of sit there and plug away and keep growing and selling? And is this something that you could eventually see, taking public, or, just want to keep going it alone for a while? What are you thinking about the future of InsightFinder?
Yeah, I think this year will be a very, important and exciting year for us because, so in the past, almost 10 years, we have been laser focused on building product, right? So, unlike a lot of startup company and some startup company, before they even have a product, they raise tons of money and they do a lot of marketing. And so that's basically where we actually, in our space, that's literally the AIOps space, right? So people actually, a lot of vendors make claims about the AIOps. And so they are selling product claiming there's AI behind it, but when you look at the product, there's no AI, right? So it's all basically manual rules. And so that's basically burn a lot of customers. And that's one of the challenges we actually have to battle and to get people regain the confidence, right? So the good news is that we have actually very good satisfaction from our customers. We have zero chance. And so we always get really good compliment from our customers to basically say, okay, this is the first time they see the AI in action. So that's sort of I think the benefit we have been the reward we have been actually laser focused on building product. And so this year we are at this moment we're actually closing our Series B round. And so we want to use the money to actually really speed up the go-to-market. So we have basically just one salesperson, not even a real salesperson in the company. And so this year we're planning to actually really build up a sales team. And so we believe the product is actually have a right timing also because as this AI becomes more complex and also more code is written in AI, that's actually very dangerous because a lot of people think, I can develop a product very quickly now, but they didn't realize what if there's a bug in it and you don't even understand the code, right? So how do you debug it? And so we'll see basically more problems will happen and in production. And so it will be more and more those cases very hard to debug, right? So, and the other thing is that for InsightFinder, we also trying to solve basically the problem, the hardest problem, right? We target the hardest bug in the production environments, not those easy low-hanging fruit. And so, so that's basically we think it's the right timing for now. So we want to actually really scale up, and so we hope basically we can actually either IPO or exit, right? So and then basically in the next few years, and so it's really going to accelerate. Yeah.
People see these movies and they hear these stories of people starting a company and 5 years later they've sold it for $100 million or whatever. It almost never works that way. You've been at it 10 years, building a really solid foundation. You're just slow and steady wins the race, and now you're ready to really scale it up. So it takes a lot longer, but it's better to do it right. There's the old classic, the tortoise and the hare. Sometimes the tortoise wins by really building a solid foundation and then scaling up from there. And you've got all your referenceable customers now. It works. You've got an ability to do proof of concepts. You're just ready to fire on all cylinders. So that's exciting time for you guys. We'll be cheering for you here to be another big Triangle success story. Yeah. So because I have one of the smartest people I know on here about LLMs and AI, there's a lot of, in the press, there's a lot of noise around, or amongst people that code, a lot of people feel like we had in the last 60 days, we hit a really big inflection point in the curve. And it's part of it is the agents being able to run much longer. A lot of people mention Claude Code and now Claude Co-work. And then, the new OpenAI models that are able to go hours and hours and do lots of really complex tasks. Do you feel that do you feel that too, like in what you're seeing? Do you think that's true that we're like at the elbow of some curve of a new logarithmic growth leg, or what do you, just in general of LLMs?
Yeah, I think the LLMs basically can be very good to answer the questions that basically widely known the problem. So because what LLM get trained is basically internet data, right? And so you can ask all kinds of questions that if the question is available on internet, I think LLM is doing very good job. So to a certain extent, I think the capability being able to answer those questions has been actually amazing and really speed up a lot of things for all of us, right? So whether it's actually doing some tasks or some coding, and you can ask coding questions, you can generate code. So those are basically, I think, pretty mature now. And Even also like, different models, the difference between different models becomes smaller and smaller. So it used to be like ChatGPT is a lot better than maybe Llama, and then now basically you have all kinds of models, and the difference among them will become very small.
Okay, so they'll kind of converge, a convergence
Yeah,
of models.
kind of converge. Yeah. So, but the problem now, I think, is always like the hardest part is the last mile, right? Last 10%. So especially in the enterprise use case, right? So you want to use those LLM in enterprise use cases, and so you need to tackle the last 1 mile, right? And so I think this basically takes a lot of domain expertise, takes a lot of right tools. You need to have the right tools. That's why fine tuning is very important. Most of the customers do not actually have the capability to do fine tuning, but if you want to actually really have a very highly accurate model for your use case, you have to do fine tuning, right? So most of those basically capabilities are not in place yet. So I think it's also very dangerous to trust LLM. So now basically a lot of people think LLM always give you answer, and they trust LLM all the time, right? Because LLM sounds very confident, like I know this, right? So they never tell you I don't know, right? So that I think that's the biggest problem with LLM. So it's also very dangerous, especially if you want to make some if it's like, should I buy milk from this brand? Maybe that's not that big a problem. But if I think, oh, is this cancer or not, right? So that LLM will tell you, yes, this is cancer. Okay, fine. If you make mistakes and you even don't know you make mistakes because there's no expert behind it to support it, right? So that's particularly, I think, why I think we developed basically this kind of AI observability tool to even monitor those AI agents and make sure they are giving correct answers.
And then you probably get this question almost every day when you're at NC State, but I have a daughter that's a freshman in college. As a parent, what do you tell kids about, there's a lot of worry and about AI and will they have a job and this kind of thing. I know what my advice is, but I'm curious, what do you say to the folks that ask you that question?
Yeah. So I think I always tell people, I don't believe AI will replace human, and AI should not replace human. That's basically always my belief. I believe AI should do what human cannot do. And so essentially, there are a lot of tasks that I don't believe AI can do, right? So creative work, art, music, or even design, right? So computer science maybe got hit a lot recently, and a lot of people will think, oh, I don't need so many programmers. But I tell the students, and what you learn is not about coding. What you learn is to understand how operating system works, why your code runs slower or faster, and what's basically the robustness you need to building, right? So what's the design that it will scale? So those things, it's very complicated, and so I don't think AI can do that, and I don't think basically those things will be replaced by AI, and so I think for the kids, right? So you need to understand the fundamentals, right? So you need to understand how to design things, how to actually come up with idea and then implement the idea, right? So to a certain extent, LLM is just a mimic, right? So it's a mimic what they learned on internet, but it's not really real innovation. So that's basically, we want the kids to think more on the out-box side and to do more creative thinking and to understand basically what's the underlying kind of foundations, right? Principles. Those things I think are still very hard for LLM to understand. And even I don't believe LLM can eventually doing creative thinking.
I appreciate you humoring those kind of crazy questions at the end there. If folks want to learn more about what you're up to, I imagine that you have a page at NC State that talks about all your professor kind of stuff. And then is LinkedIn a good place for people to kind of follow you and what you're up to at InsightFinder, or do you have a company blog or anything like that?
Yeah. We do have blogs, and so we publish blogs all the time. And so so we have, LinkedIn page, and so we announce our new things all the time on the website as well. So definitely feel free to follow us. And so we also have YouTube channel, and so we publish our demo videos, and sometimes we have webinars, and so we also push out the content there as well. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we really appreciate your time doing the interview, and good luck closing out your round. I'll knock on wood, and then hopefully you have an amazing 2026, and that sets you up for an even bigger 2027.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so it has been a pleasure. Yeah, thanks for your support, Otto.
Absolutely. Thanks for the time. Bye. Triangle Tweener Talks is hosted by Scott Wingo, presented and produced by Triangle Tweener Fund, with creative assets and design support from our friends at Walk West. That's it for today's episode. A big thank you to our guests, sponsors, and the team that makes this podcast possible. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who loves the startup stories coming out of the Triangle. Thanks for listening. We will see you next time on Triangle Tweener Talks.